Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for having me. So as Guillermo said, I'm a state range specialist, but I'm also a rancher in eastern New Mexico, not far from where Tom's ranching. And a lot of my presentation today is tailored to ranchers. I was told that was the target audience today. And a lot of my perspective on range monitoring will be more from a rancher's perspective than a range specialist perspective. So, um, having said that, we'll go ahead and get started. So before we talk about range monitoring, we've got to talk about rangelands a little bit. And so in New Mexico, 80% of New Mexico is classified as rangelands. And so in some way or another, ranchers are are on this 80% of the land at some point or another, and the bulk of what we're doing on the lands is grazing livestock. And so rangelands in New Mexico are very important to the ranching community, but not only the ranching community, but everybody else, whether they know it or not, is impacted by what happens on rangelands through the food they eat, or everything from clean water to wildlife habitat. Rangelands provide outdoor recreation, and they're an excellent carbon sink for this climate change mitigation that's the buzzword lately. And so it's important that we manage these lands and in a sustainable manner so that our kids and our grandkids and their kids will continue to enjoy all the benefits that rangelands provide. And so rangeland monitoring specifically, so why is it important, and what is it? So basically, range monitoring is documenting what's going on the rangelands and documenting the change, whether positive or negative. And so a lot of times we observe a lot of change on the rangeland, but we don't document it. And it just becomes nothing more than a story that somebody told. And they said the lands used to be a grassland and now they're a desert, like we have in the Chihuahuan Desert. And if we didn't have pictures and we didn't have documentation that the Chihuahuan Desert, for example, was once a grassland, most people have never seen it in that state. They've seen a degraded desert and full of thorny bushes, mesquite and creosote. And so, if you've never seen it, a lot of people who are disconnected from the land would assume that the lands are supposed to look that way, and they've always looked that way. And so that's why it's important to document what the lands were and what they are, and what they have the potential to be. And so that's why monitoring is important. The other thing, it's important for us as ranchers to be able to document if the change in management that we're implementing is working, or if it's not working, or if the current management is working and we don't need to change it. And so most of I really put a lot of value in very simple range monitoring, specifically photo plots. Photo plots are really the easiest way to monitor rangelands. Um, but before we talk about range monitoring, it's important to understand ecological site descriptions and how they work. But basically, this is an eco site description map of our ranch over in around Cuervo, New Mexico. And there's basically three ecological sites on this whole ranch, and it's broke out here. The red area is a clay loam ecological site. The green is a clay, and that little bit of blue is a sandy loam ecological site. And so an eco site is lands that have similar vegetation or the capacity to produce similar vegetation. It's kind of like a soils map, but we as range cons are lumpers and not splitters. So we lump a lot of these soils into ecological sites because mostly we're concerned as range cons as with their ability to produce vegetations, types and amounts of vegetation. And so when we do our range monitoring, we start observing things. It really helps to be able to break them out into ecological sites And that way we're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And so you can't really compare the data from a grassland to that of a forest or that of a pinon juniper woodland, okay? Because those are all really completely different ecological sites and different types of land, okay? But when we compare a grassland to a grassland, then we start to be able to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And so as I said, my favorite method is photo monitoring because it's very simple, it's inexpensive, and it's rapid. Um, I've found that when working with ranchers, ranchers are very common. They have a very common sense approach to everything, to their problem solving, and if they can't see it, it's hard for a rancher to wrap their mind around it. Okay, and so a picture says 1,000 words. It's really important that we understand who our audience is when we start to put together our methods for range monitoring. If you're in the business of ranching, monitoring as simple as a photo might be enough to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with your management. Now, if you're a scholar, if you're in the world of academia and you're doing research, you work for ARS. Folks that work for ARS, they're really big into research and data, and they like research and data, and they like to extrapolate all that data and make it make sense to them. Whereas on the other hand, the rancher, a picture is usually enough to do what they need to do. And so another method that I'll talk about is species diversity surveys. They're excellent ways to monitor rangelands when it comes to a rancher, and maybe not so much for the scholars or the world of academia or the research world. And part of the problem is that a lot of the methodology of range monitoring was built by the research world or the world of academia, and it's built to do research and to repeat it, and it's built for them. And when we try to sell this to a rancher, we lose them because sometimes, most of the time, it's just too much. And so anyways, having said that, I'll keep on going. Okay. And I'm just going to go through a lot of pictures. I'm really big on photo monitoring. This right here is right after a wildfire in northern New Mexico and the Calf Canyon Hermit's Peak fire. I took this picture when this trash rack went in to mitigate soil erosion, and the picture right below is in the exact same spot. And it answered the question, did our practice do what we intended it to do? In this case, it did. It really worked pretty well in filling in that gully. One rainfall event completely filled in that gully. And that answered all that we needed to answer. We didn't really have to collect a lot of data. And so, let me see. This is another one right after a wildfire. This is a simple practice we call a rock and brush dam. Before and after pictures are usually enough to do what we need to do. In my world, that's all I need to know is, did it work? And if not, what do I need to change to make it work and accomplish what I'm trying to do? Here's another before and after picture of another trash rack before and after. And when specifically doing photo monitoring, it's important. It's really an art to retake a picture in the exact same spot. So when you set up a photo monitoring plot, you want to be really careful about taking the exact same picture, because when you tell the story, you don't want to have to tell the story. You just want to present the picture, and the picture says it all. And you don't want anybody to question, well, that's not even the same spot. You're showing me two different places. And so what you're after when you're setting up a photo monitoring, you're really after that wow factor. And if you can't accomplish that wow factor through a picture, especially when working with ranchers, you're likely not going to accomplish it with data either. Okay. So, like I said, it's important that we know who our audience is. This is another rain seeding project on that same fire. Okay. Within months of the fire, we came in and seeded it back to grass to hold down soil. The question was, did it work? And as you can see, it did work in this case. So usually that's all we're after. Did it work? And if it didn't work, what do we got to do to make it work? What do we got to do different next time? Okay. These pictures are the ones on the right is that same fire. That one is not the exact same spot. I didn't take the time to take a before picture before this seeding project, um, but it is in the same area. And but this is how it goes when you don't take the exact same picture in the same spot. Some people could ask the question, well, that picture could have been anywhere, and maybe that's not even the same fire. It might not even be in the same state, right? People start asking questions. So, like I said, you're after that wow factor, and you want there to be no doubt at all that those pictures were taken in the same spot on the same piece of land. Okay. The ones on the left are on our own ranch in the Santa Rosa, New Mexico area. And I've got a story about this. For a long time, I didn't really place a lot of value in monitoring, but it has been one of the best tools I've learned over time. That if I can't sell it with the picture alone to a rancher, I'm probably not going to sell. I'm not going to sell anything to that rancher. I'm not going to convince them of anything, and I'm especially not going to do it with data. Okay. But this picture right here on the left was of our own ranch. I'm not the manager of the ranch. My dad's the manager of the ranch. And it took a long time to talk him into grazing management. He really wasn't a believer. He was a continuous grazer. Finally talked him into trying out some rotational grazing, some very simple rotational grazing, not too complex. He'd been doing it for 3 or 4 years now. In his mind, he hadn't really seen any change, and it wasn't working any better than what he was already doing. This is another picture. And about 4 years into this grazing management, this new practice that he was using, he hadn't seen any change in his mind. It wasn't even working any better than what he'd been doing before. And around, let's see, March of 22, when the after picture was taken, most ranchers were selling cattle because it hadn't rained in that area. And down every county road, there was a truckload of cattle headed to the sale barn. And I tell them, look, all these ranchers are all selling cattle because they're out of grass. Because to a rancher, that's when the drought starts. The drought starts when they're out of grass. Whether the weather's been good to them or not, when they're out of grass, most of the time, they're officially in a drought. Okay. And I tell them everybody's selling cattle because they're out of grass and they're headed to the sale barn, and they're going to get whatever they can get for those cattle because they're all doing the same thing. I tell them, and you have 5 pastures you haven't even touched yet. Tell me now that this grazing management stuff doesn't work. And like a hard-headed rancher, he said, well, maybe it works a little bit. And I wasn't satisfied with that. We went to the 4 corners of where four ranches meet, and I tell them, stand right there and look around at all your neighbors and look at your land. Tell me again how this grazing management stuff doesn't work. And he said, well, maybe a little bit it works. That same day I went and took this after picture. I had photo monitoring plots already set up. And when I put these pictures together and I showed them to him, I said, tell me again, this is your land. Tell me again how this grazing management stuff doesn't work. And that was an eye-opener for him. He said, wow, I can't believe how much the land has changed. And it dawned on me then that a rancher, these photo points are important because a rancher can implement the change and not see the change. Okay. And because a rancher's out on his land every day, every single day they see it day in and day out, and they don't see that change because it happens so slow. And it's a lot like watching your kids grow up. You don't really see your kids grow up till you look at a picture from second grade, and then you look at a picture from third grade. You say, wow, this kid grew up. But you never saw that change happen until you saw two pictures of the same kid next to each other. And it's no different for a rancher and his land. Whether the change is positive or the change is negative, they can't really see it until they look at two pictures next to each other and say, oh, wow, a lot's happened out here since I implemented that change. Okay. And so from then on, I've placed a lot of value on photo monitoring, and a photo alone accomplished what I needed to accomplish with that guy. And if I wouldn't have accomplished it with those pictures alone, there wasn't enough data to satisfy that rancher that the work he's been doing uh, was having a positive impact on his land. Okay, and so here are some more pictures of Lincoln County here in New Mexico. Most people drive through Lincoln County today who are not from around here, and they would believe that the land's supposed to be full of junipers. And if it wasn't for this picture taken in 1912, everybody would believe that Lincoln County is supposed to have all these junipers encroaching on the grasslands. But we know that those trees don't belong there, and it's all for lack of fire and a combination of fire and grazing management that has caused, or a lack of fire that has caused these trees to encroach. Okay. Here's another one from Lincoln County. Picture on the left, 1900, and the one on the right is 1999. Okay. The amount of trees that have encroached into this land is incredible. But if you look at the picture on the right, most people say, well, that's the way the land's supposed to look. It's always looked this way. Okay. Another method that I really like is a species diversity survey. That alone, because ranchers are very show me kind of people, this has really worked well. On this particular ranch that my dad runs, when he was a continuous grazer, he might have had about 7 or 8 different species of perennial grasses on his place. After changing the management within a year, we went out and looked at the land and counted 23 different grasses. Okay. And it really always amazes me how many ranchers are, their entire livelihood depends on grasses, and we can't identify 10 grasses that grow on our place. Okay. And so it's always a really good conversation starter for me as a range management specialist to start the conversation with, let's walk around the land and ID some of these grasses. We've got this soil health on rangelands assessment that works really well. And what we do is we take this ecosite description that has a list of all the grasses that historically were on the land and should be on the land. In this case, there's I believe there's 12 different species of perennial grasses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 species of grasses. Okay. And so if you walk out on the land and you start counting grasses and see where we are relative to the ecosite description, and you count 6 out of 10 grasses and you can't find the other 4, it's a real eye opener for a rancher. They say, well, I could have all these other grasses and I don't. What do I need to do to get more diversity on my land? And most of the time in New Mexico, it's the cool season component that's missing. Western wheatgrass, needle and thread, New Mexico feathergrass, bottlebrush squirreltail, all these cool season grasses that are very important to a rancher. The first thing to green up in the spring when cattle are calving, and the last thing to go dormant in the fall. And these cool season grasses are missing almost entirely on most New Mexico rangelands. But as soon as you point it out to a rancher and you walk through the land and you count and you truly identify these grasses, then it's an eye opener for a rancher to start paying attention to the land. And a rancher quickly learns that it's not just all grass. There's some grasses are more desirable than others, and others, some are cool season grasses, some are warm season grasses. And so I really like this method of monitoring for a rancher, because it's very very concrete. It's very something real that they can see and things that they can't see. And when they go through there after changing the management and they go from 8 grasses to 23 grasses, big difference. A rancher really opens their eyes and say, wow, what I'm doing is really making a difference. And so that's all I really have: photo monitoring and species diversity. When it comes to working with ranchers, there's beauty and simplicity. Okay. And like I said, when you're working with ARS and you're working with a research institution like one of these universities, then you can step it up to a little more data, some transects, some cover, some gap, all the information that you get out of a transect. Um, with that, that's all I have for you guys. If you've got questions, I
All
can
right.
answer them.
Thank you very much, Jim. If anybody has any questions, we'll do maybe 1 or 2 minutes for questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat or maybe raise your hand if you want to ask directly.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat already
Yes, sir.
here. Do you have tips for the best ways to set up photo monitoring plots?
Yes, I do. And I imagine somebody will probably go through this in the next presentations, but you you want to set up your monitoring plot in something where you're going to observe change. For example, if you're already encroached with, say, junipers, for example, and there's very little room for change to be observed, probably not a good place to put your photo monitoring plot. Another one is you don't want to put them too close to water because the area close to the water is really going to be degraded most of the time. There's not a lot of room for change. Um, a quarter mile to a half mile from water is an excellent place to put a photo monitoring point. The other thing you want to look at, say your ranch or your pasture, and look for a piece that resembles the majority of the land that is on your place, because that's where you want to see the change, and that's where you're going to see the impact. And so find something that resembles the majority of the land that you want to monitor and put your plot there and observe that spot. And the more plots you put, the the better the better information you're going to get. Um, that's a couple. I'm sure in the rest of the presentations, you'll that question will be answered.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have, so we can go ahead and move on to the next speaker. And I am going to be sharing those slides. Guillermo, did you have anything you wanted to say by way of introduction?
No, Tom Sidwell was introduced earlier, but again, if you think of any questions, even from the previous speaker, just drop them in the chat and we'll try to get to those, maybe even at the end. Thank you.
Put this in presentation mode. Can you all see the slide in presentation mode now? Perfect. Okay, it's yours, Tom. Take it away.
All right. So, my wife and I manage this ranch south of Tucumcari, approximately 20 miles, and you can see the Caprock in the background. And I don't remember when this photo was taken, but it was several years after we had begun management. And so we manage by the holistic management or regenerative grazing or whatever. We have 30 pastures and we graze one herd of cattle through those pastures. Okay, next. And so the purpose of monitoring for my purpose is to collect data and information so I can objectively assess the cumulative effects of our management and any environmental variables to assure that we're on the right path to meet our goals. So we have a 3-part goal: quality of life. That's to work and live the country life, not in town, not in an office, live and pass on the values and conservative traditions of a cattle ranch. Our production goal is through enterprise diversification, produce a product valued by the consumer. And our landscape goal is to return the land to its original grassland complex with healthy watersheds, abundant wildlife, and clean flowing springs. Next. So what do I monitor and what techniques? So I use photo points. I rely on them quite a bit, just like Jim does. So that shows changes in landscape, the species and bare ground to some extent. It's not like running a transect, but it's fast and it's easy. I have 9 photo points and actually a lot more landscape type that I've also used. So another monitoring that I do is rain gauges. I measure the rainfall in 5 locations on the ranch. Every fall, I do a forage assessment. So I assess the forage production for drought planning and setting the stocking rate. We monitor soil health. This is fairly recently, last 3 or 4 years. Organic matter, carbon, and water infiltration. We've also started monitoring our wells. We've been doing this for about 10 years now, 9 years. And because we've seen a change in the water level in our wells. Basically, what tipped me off on this was that we saw less runoff into our dirt tanks. That water's got to go somewhere, and so we started monitoring those. And Kate Ziegler, who many of you may know, is doing that work. Forage quality. So I collect grass samples, send them off for analysis for protein, TDN, and mineral content. And then I build my supplementation program from that. And so we sell grass-fed beef direct to customers, and so we monitor weight gain. We also monitor quality of the beef through customer surveys. And it's very important that we listen to our customers. Financial, of course, we monitor the costs and returns of the ranch operation. Next. So the photo points, I'll just show a few of them. This is one right on the north end of the ranch. You can see the mesquite here in the foreground. And we began grubbing the mesquite. And I did about 1,000 acres all in the background here. And so this was a month ago when I took this in 2024. We see a little bit of decrease here in the bare ground, but you see a huge difference in the mesquite. This doesn't reflect it real well, but there's a big change in the diversity of the species. Next. And this site here is a sandy site. Quite a bit of bare ground, a lot of weeds. I don't know what it is. It's a weed. Cattle didn't eat it or anything. In 2017, and for quite a few years, even to the present, plains bristlegrass moved in. It just moved in on its own. And you can see it is very thick. This is taken in 2024, was taken a couple of months ago, or last month, I should say. So we've got a combination of, there's western wheat, there's plains bristlegrass, sand drop seed, so on and so forth. So this site has improved, and these photos really show the improvement. Next. And this is a pretty similar site. It's a loam site. A lot of bare ground. And you can see we've got species moved in, more diversity. This is plains bristlegrass, and we see some thickening of the grass and less bare ground. Next. This is a major arroyo that runs off of the ranch. And one of the things you see here changing is a lot more vegetation. We've got, I think it's burl brush, but a variety of grasses that are growing along the banks here. See some narrowing down of the channel. See some grass beginning to establish on the side here, on the slope, and as compared to here. Change on something like this is really slow, but it is showing a change. And next. So our rain gauges, like I said, I had 5 rain gauges. I've been monitoring these for 20 years now. The Tucumcari gauge, what is that? That's about 100. No, it's hard to read. Oh, this is Raglan. So we're looking at about 100 years or so of data. The average is 17 inches. Tucumcari, the average is 15.9. So, we're in between both, and so I figured our average is 16.6. Not scientific, but it's good enough for what I want to monitor. And so each year I read these, I read them daily as it rains, and average it at the end of the year, and then this is a percent of the long-term average. So in the last 20 years, our average here has been a 12 and a half, 12.7 inches, something like that over the last 20 years. And so that's reflected in the, what everybody says, that we're in a drought or a mega drought. And so we're seeing this here. The beauty of this is that even with the majority of our years being dry years, and some of them pretty darn dry, that we're seeing an improvement in the soil, in the grasses, and so on through management. Next. So one of the things that I do that I think is very important is our drought planning. We know we're going to have a drought, we just don't know when. So I planned for one, and I can go out there in pasture and I can look at something like this. Okay, do I have enough grass here to run my cattle for, say, the next 300 days? I'll do this in the fall of the year, and I want to know by, say, the 1st of November next year whether we have enough grass to hold our herd at present, considering that we may not have any rain. And it's pretty hard to look at it and estimate. So I have a 1 yard square frame that I throw out there. I'll clip it, weigh it, calculate. Next. And I'll enter in a form like this. So in that example there, we had 100 grams per square yard, 80 on a dry basis. And it takes 284 square yards to run one cow for 1 day, which, if you take the square root, that's a 17 yard by 17 yard, or 17 steps by 17 step area. That now I can go out there on another pasture or another location, and I can look at this new location, and I can step off 17 by 17. Well, if it's pretty similar to what I had before, where I clipped, then I'll go ahead and call it the same as this. It may be more or less, but I do it by estimating based on clippings. And I will clip where the soil changes or the grass species are different. And basically what this does is it calibrates my eye to the land, to the grass on the land. So the bottom figure here is, these are animal days that this pasture can handle based on that productivity. When I finish all of my pastures, I add it up and I get a total, and that's the total for animal days on the ranch. I can divide that by the number of days that I'm planning for, let's say 300, and that will give me the number of cattle that I can run based on this forage assessment. So if it shows that if the final figure shows that I need to reduce some numbers, I can reduce those numbers in November or December, instead of, like most ranchers will do, they'll start reducing their numbers in June or July or something like that, when they're already out of grass. And so you can usually time the market a little better by planning for a drought. And likewise, if my total animal days is more than what my herd is going to use, including horses and bulls, then I can do something like hold my calves over a little longer. Maybe bring some yearlings in, or just let it, be there as cover. And so you have options. And I find that this is one of the most important monitoring tools that I use on the ranch. I tell a lot of people to say, well, I plan for the drought, and so far everything is going according to plan. And I get some weird looks when I say that, but it really helps, makes a big difference. Next. And so the data showed on that one clipping there that it's 17 by 17 steps. And that's what this would look like right there. So I can look at that 17 by 17, and I can look at the grass that's in it and say, well, that's what it's going to take to run one cow for one day. On another side, it may be more bare ground. So I can expand that out to maybe 18, 19, 20, whatever. Like I said, it's an estimation, but it's a fairly accurate estimation that I have found. Next. And so this is a grazing chart, and the animal days per pasture ends up being a rating for each pasture that I list right down here. And that rating in a formula gives me the grazing period for that pasture. And so with that grazing period, then I have a guide as to how long to stay in that pasture. But I'm still monitoring, and I monitor it when those cattle are in the pasture or when I'm going to move them into a new pasture. I could stay a day longer, as an example, or maybe I need to move them a day earlier. And so there's nothing cut and dry. It's all an estimation until you get right down to the nitty gritty on the days that those cattle are grazing in the pastures. And you're still monitoring, you're still making a decision. So this is, so I can also mark out pastures here that I don't want to be in. This is on top of the cap rock in the winter months. This pasture is for watershed. Here's my calving. The blue is for breeding season. The black line is weaning. And so, this gives me an idea here where the cattle are going to be in for certain management times. Next. And so soil health is another thing that we monitor, and I have sent off samples to get organic matter and the other data that you get from sending off soil samples. I've got a baseline data on that, and I figure maybe every 3 or 4 years we'll all do it again, just to see if we do see a change. But this was bare ground. This was outdoor range consultants from Park City, Utah, that did some studies out on the ranch in 2015 using satellite imagery and remote sensing. So there's high resolution photography with satellite imagery. And they found that bare ground on our ranch was much less than on the neighboring ranch that had continuous grazing. Next. Same thing with carbon. They found that on our ranch that we had 38% more, or there was a 38% difference in the carbon sequestration, which ended up being about 4 tons more per acre on our ranch that was sequestered than was on a ranch with continuous grazing. Next. So we do water infiltration. That's also something that, like I said, our dirt tanks, I noticed that after a few years, they began drying up, not as much water flowing into them. with the increase in grass production, decrease in bare ground, well, that water's going somewhere. The bottom picture here is a good example. So the foreground, and this is right next to a water lot. So the foreground here shows that we had 2 inches of snow. I had moved the cattle out of the foreground the day before. They moved to a pasture just adjacent. The background on the other side of this fence, the cattle hadn't been there for 90 days. They will be there in a couple of days. But you can see what's happened to the snow melt when where the cattle have really impacted the soil through hoof action, that the water is going into the ground. In the background, at one time, it was also impacted by animals. But over time, that soil begins to seal over again. So you see the snow melt is running off. And to me, this shows why, I think my next slide is water level, why we've increased our water levels. Kate Ziegler, who I don't know, some of you may know her, but she does a lot of well monitoring in the northeastern part of the state, southeastern Colorado. And so she measures the water levels in each one of these wells twice a year. And this area where we're at is well noted for having weak wells. They pump off. Water is a real problem here. And so when a well such as this one can increase 1 foot, I think that's pretty significant. Here's another foot. These 2 wells, New Hammond and Caprock, they're on top of the cap. I can't explain why they have increased so much. I don't think it's from management, but there's something to do with the Oglala. This one right here has come up 17 feet. So if you remember on that grazing plan where I had that one pasture blocked out from grazing, except in the winter months, because of watershed, there's the result right there. That water level has risen 17 feet in that one well. And I use that pasture for weaning calves in the fall of the year. And that really shows what's happened there. Here's a well that's come up 2 feet, quarter of a foot. The Playa well is a relatively new one that she established. And the purpose of that is to show the effects or the impact of water in the Playa lakes on well production. And this well is right on the edge. It's an old well, and it's right on the edge of the Playa Lake. So, really can't determine anything here, but I think over time we'll be able to see what impact the water in the Playa Lakes have on the well water, on the static water level. Next. Another thing I monitor is the forage quality. And so I'll clip grass and I'll send it off for analysis. And what I'm interested in more than anything else, just to keep it simple, is crude protein and TDN. And based on these, then I can develop my supplementation program. Given all the old grass that we will have, I feed a 37% cottonseed cube. And it's based on this information here. I have this information for this sort of data here for below the cap and then also for above the cap. And I think a livestock production really shows a positive effect from being able to gear my supplementation to what the livestock need and what the forage is providing. Next. And so we also monitor the beef quality. We'll monitor our weight gains and customer survey as far as, how was the beef, how was the service with the processors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have hundreds of really positive feedback from our customers. And we listen to them. We have some customers that are immunocompromised, and they can detect hormones and antibiotics in store-bought meat. And so they've started eating our beef and can eat beef, and now, so that increases the market. Otherwise, they just wouldn't eat beef. Next. Some more comments. And our customers are very pleased with how we manage the land. That's one of the things that they comment on, is that we take care of the cattle, we're taking care of the land, so on and so forth. And years ago when we started this, we've been doing this about 15 years. So years ago when we first started it, well, we would have a customer appreciation day. And it got to be where it was so big, we had so many customers coming that we just couldn't handle it anymore.
Right. Tom,
Yes.
sorry to cut you off, but I think we have to, if you have any closing remarks, and then we have to move on to
Okay. So the
next.
next slide, I think I've only got one more left.
Okay, thank you.
No, I don't. So drought planning, grazing planning, you can see the difference here on our side of the fence, left side of the fence, recovery from a drought. And to the right of that, the right top row, you see the length of the grass sleeves versus across the fence with continuous grazing. Same thing on the bottom pictures. The response is a whole lot quicker and more productive. Okay, next. So monitoring the resources on ranch results in healthy soils, resulting in healthy livestock, resulting in healthy quality product and happy customers and happy ranchers. So that's it. Any questions?
I think there was one question, but then you actually addressed it partially with one of your slides about nutritional quality of the grass. So unless there is another question about this speaker or the previous one, just drop it in the chat, but we have to move on to our next speaker, Casey Spackman. So anytime you're ready.
Yes. Thank you, Tom and Jim. Great introduction to what I'm gonna share. So there's many ways that you can monitor. One of the monitoring methods that New Mexico State University promotes is the rapid assessment methodologies. The issue that we had with that I kept on hearing was, all right, we've collected the data, what do we do with it? And so I started putting things together and developed a website to help analyze that information that people were collecting. This is the Rangeland Data Analysis and Records Program that's available to you online. You can go ahead and log onto that, create an account. It's secure. Only you can see the data that you're putting in there. No one else can see that, so it's private only to you. And New Mexico State University will not share that information without your consent with that. So I'm going to briefly go through the website, how it works, and what it produces for you as a land manager. So this is the landing page up in that top corner. On the top, you can see a couple of things. If you're interested in the monitoring procedures we use, there's a whole web page about that. I'm not going to get into that. The other presenters did great at presenting some of those methodologies and what is important for monitoring. Also, we have this publication that's out there for monitoring. All right, so when you first visit this web page, you want to create an account. Pretty straightforward. You click on the login.
It's going to take you to this. You either log in or you create an account. Pretty straightforward there. Requires some basic information for you to enter. Once you do create an account, be patient with us. I have to approve every account that is created. So it sends me a notification that somebody wants a new account and I have to approve it. That prevents a lot of the spamming and bots that are out there that could inundate the website. So once you log in, there's some new tabs there. Data entry, it goes through step by step and what I'm going to go through right now. So the first thing you do is if you've gone out, you've done your monitoring with the methods we prescribe, then you can create a new report. And the very first thing on the report you enter is, you want to call it something so you can keep track of that. The name of the pasture, name of the ranch, name of the location, anything that fits where you're monitoring. And as you can see there on the top, it's 5 steps, right? So we're going to work through these steps as we go through. So that was for step 1, is to name your report. The second step is to create a report. So we have this data sheet here. The top portion of that data sheet coincides nicely with all of this information that you're going to put in there. So you put in producer name, pasture name, and the date it was surveyed, who's collecting, which transect. Sometimes we have multiple transects that we're monitoring. Put in the pasture size. That will help to calculate the stocking rate, approximate stocking rate numbers that can run based on your data. The GPS coordinates are return locations, so you can have a reference to where you collected that data, and you can come back again and monitor that same site. So now we get to entering the data. The first one, there's 4 main things that need to be entered. We want to record cover. We want to record species height, and we want to record the species that is there. And so each one of these has a drop-down menu. So you can see you have some options here: bare ground, litter, vegetation, rock. You can enter that in there and then move on to the next one, which is vegetation height. Once again, these coincide directly with the data sheet that we provide in our monitoring. And then also the plant species. We have a plant species list there that you can enter. If there's any of those plant species that you've identified that are not in that list, reach out to me. I will enter them. Species 1 is the only one that you need to reach out to me. Species 2 is generally, I think that's on the next one. Species 2, you can manipulate that to the different species that you find. But generally that's reserved for broadleaf species, forbs, not necessarily the grasses that we're monitoring for forage content. But it does come in handy from an ecological standpoint to know changes in broadleafs versus your grass species or forage species. So if you do want to add one, you simply click on that, add new species, enter the required information, and it will tabulate it for you and put it into the species 2. So when you get done adding the first box, then you hit next or save to draft, and it moves to the next one. And you go through that. We've required that you put in at least 50 because that's the minimum requirement to get good information. We don't want people putting in like 10 and calling it a good monitoring report. That's not good practice. So we require 50, but it goes up to 100 entries. We call those entries a hit because that's what is on the transect each time you take a reading. it's considered a hit, whether it's vegetation, bare ground, or cover, those kind of things. Now, it's interesting that Jim brought up photo points and how important they are, and I completely agree. So there is a step here, step 4, that you can enter different images. We generally have one that is a landscape image, and then we have one that is a ground image. And we'll show you. So when you upload your image, it's got to be under a certain size, and then the next one, you can crop it and adjust it as needed to be able to fit it in the report. We're working on the website to update it. This is our first iteration of it. The second iteration will allow you just to enter the photo points and keep a photographic record of your transects and your land. But for now, we have to enter everything on the data sheet, but in the future we'll have it just for, there'll be a section there that you'll be able to just enter photos and keep it as a repository for your photo monitoring. There's also a section there for wildlife, so we count fecal, get relative visitations by livestock, and then you can add as many comments as you want to what's going on that landscape. We don't include nutrition of the grasses, so if you want to enter some data there, or just general comments as it's a dry year, there's a lack of vegetation, we're in drought, cattle got out and we're in this pasture, which is away from the transect, things like that. Any comment that you see fit to help you become a better land manager, there's your opportunity for comments for your report. Sampling hoops or quadrants, there's a known size to those, and those are very important to convert what you're clipping on the ground and weighing out to pounds per acre is what it converts to. So you need to know the size, the given size to help determine that. And then also there are spaces there that you can enter what your weights are for a given area to be able to come up with an estimate of how much forage is on the ground. There's 2 different types there. There's dried clip weights, which are just readings. Things may have consumed it. I think another word for that is standing crop or available biomass. So that's available to anything. The other one is if you set out exclusion cages, you can get annual production, and that's what that final row is there on the bottom. So with each one of these, you can either save or move on. But once you get to this point, you can save or you can generate your report. If you click generate report, it'll come up with this. It'll give you a big congratulations, a big pat on the back. Nothing more. Sorry. We tried to do something that would catch your attention, but this is the best we can do. We'd like to reach through the computer, pat you on the back, but this is all we've got. So once you get to this point, then you can click on go to that report. You just there's 3 options. You can go to your reports. That means going back to the main menu, or up there at the top, you can just view the report, or you can download the report in a PDF format. And I will get to that in the report format in just a minute. So once you go back to the main menu, you can see that we have a report there. There's 3 dots on the right side. You can edit, you can clone it, which means duplicate it. So you'll have 2 of the same reports there, or you can delete it. There's also an eye there, which is just viewing it. And there's also a download icon there. So you can download the report and print it out as you see fit, keep it in your paper copy, filing cabinet, things like that. So here's the PDF report that you will get. It basically takes all that information in there and summarizes it for you and gives you a printout of your pictures. So you have basic information on the top. You've got what's available, which is biomass availability, pasture size, annual forage there on the right side, and then the combining of those using a 40% use of that forage gives you an estimated stocking rate for the year. We did it as a year. That way people could just divide it up for, say you've got an allotment that only runs for 180 days, you can divide 365 into 180, do the math with that, which will give you animal unit days or animal unit months. Additionally, it'll give you your percent covers based on what you've observed. It'll give you vegetation cover, and that is what you recorded as you were going down a transect by percent. And then there's also this thing down here at the bottom, which is forage composition. And when you look into the methods, that's taking the nearest forage species. So all of that should enter up or should add up to 100%. To give you kind of an estimate of what forage is on the landscape. This is excellent for when you run nutrition analysis, you can kind of adjust that for supplementation strategies because you know what forages or what percentage of forages are out there, or what they will be consuming, thus translating into something like a supplementation program. Included in that last portion is stubble heights, which are important for grazing intensities and preventing damage to the grasses. We do have minimal stubble height guidelines. I will emphasize that they are guidelines, not strict standards. So it just gives you an estimate of what the intensity is of grazing, and then also your fecal counts there at the bottom. Finally, if you have, I'm going through this really fast, trying to keep us on time, keep up. But if you have questions about the interpretations, there's always the reports and interpretation right there on the landing page that will take you to a different page that'll tell you exactly what all this information means and how it should be used. And so it's an excellent program. Really quickly, you really quickly enter the data. It summarizes the data, kicks you out an immediate report for you. It's private. It's a new tool that we've developed to help land managers interpret their data in a quick and feasible manner, rather than having to manually do it in, say, an Excel spreadsheet or anything like that. So, and that's it. So, if you have any questions, I guess I can take those if we have time. I'll turn it back over to the moderator.
All right. Thank you very much, Casey, and thank you everybody